What is going on, everybody? My name is Kyle. Welcome back to the review you've been looking for, my Star Wars and Review show, and thank you for joining me for what may or may not be my favorite Star Wars movie, Return of the Jedi. We'll find that out at the end there. No spoilers. If you haven't seen this before, this is my review show, the review you've been looking for. I'm going to be reviewing every Star Wars show in review. Empire and New Hope are up there already, so please go check that out. Today we're going to be doing Return of the Jedi, cap off the original trilogy here, and should be a blast. So without further ado, here we go. Alright, so Return of the Jedi. So we get the opening crawl here. Luke Skywalker has returned to his home planet of Tatooine in an attempt to rescue his friend Han Solo from the clutches of the vile gangster Jabba the Hutt, which we saw in Empire. Han gets frozen, the I know scene. Now they're going to rescue Han here. Little does Luke know that the Galactic Empire has secretly begun in construction on a new armored space station, even more powerful than the dreaded Death Star. When completed, this ultimate weapon will spell certain doom for the small band of rebels struggling to restore freedom to the galaxy. One of the better opening crawls, I think, short and sweet and to the point, and just kind of tells you that Luke is out to save Han and they're trying to take down the Empire once again. So we open this movie, we pan down to a shot of the unfinished Death Star, which always looks cool. But yes, the Empire is building another Death Star, and yes, it looks the same. But this one, they say it's in the final stages of preparation. It's like half full, so it's like maybe half, but anyway, that's a really cool shot in space there. We get a Star Destroyer overhead, similar to in A New Hope there. And then we get Vader's ship and then a couple of fighters that go there. Basically, Vader shows up and he says, I'm here to put you back on schedule. The Emperor is displeased with the progress or lack of progress that you've made. The commander says, you're asking the impossible. I need more men. And he says, well, perhaps you can tell that to him yourself. And the guy's like, the Emperor's coming? Like, the Emperor's coming here? Vader's like, shit, yeah, he's coming. He's like, dude, Emperor's coming for that ass, so you best be ready. But he actually says, the Emperor's not as forgiving as I am. And the Imperial March plays, and it's just a really badass opening for Return of the Jedi. So then we cut to 3PO and R2 looking for Jabba's palace back on Tatooine. They come up to a huge door, which is a really cool visual, and there's like a little eyeball that pops out. This is a funny bit where C-3PO says R2D Toa, and he says Mishka Jabba the Hutt. And eventually 3PO and R2D2 are let in there. They deliver a message from Luke, similar to kind of A New Hope when Luke's scraping off R2 and he's got the message from Leia. This is a hologram from Luke. But Luke is looking very composed here. He's looking like a badass. It's true, he's on his way to becoming a Jedi Master, and he's come a long way from that kid on Tatooine. But Luke's message says, I seek an audience to beg for Solo's life. I present to you as a gift, Jabba, these two droids. They'll service you very well. And when he says that, C-3PO is like, R2, I think you're playing the wrong message. He's like, he's not giving us away. Jabba says in a different language, in Hutt, whatever Hutt is, he says, I will not give up my favorite decoration. And then we get a camera pan over to Han Solo, who is still frozen in carbonite, as 3PO likes to tell us, the audience. And then we get a horrifying scene of the trash robot, or the robot looks like a trash. I think he was in New Hope originally, getting branded. So that's what happens to droids at Jabba's palace, so not great. Then we get the extensive dance scene with the Twi'leks here, the Gamorreans, and like, I hate this part. This part I put in here in my notes is like, God, I hate this part of Star Wars. Like, this is like aimed at kids. And I know Star Wars is kind of for kids, but mostly for just like nerdy adults like me. But it's just like, there's this goofy scene with this weird voice, and I guess it's good for kids, but this part I'm like, ugh, every time. It's been memed so many times. But then we get an awesome shot of the bounty hunter Bosch, who has come for the bounty on this Wookiee, and it turns out that's Chewie. Bosch says, I want no less than 50,000 credits. And Jabba kind of laughs, everyone's laughing, like, why would Jabba ever do that? And then 3PO is kind of translating between them, and he says, because he's holding a thermal detonator! And there's a thermal detonator there. And that's like a tense scene, and Jabba says, okay, 35 like 35, and 3PO's like, you'd be wise to take that. So that kind of calms down. There's a party. There's a small party scene there. Then we cut to, oh, I'm sorry. Before that, we get a very obvious scene of Lando Calrissian in disguise, where it's like Lando's face, and he's got like a mask on, but he just like pulls the mask down, and the camera just stays on his face for a while. So very obvious foreshadowing there. So we cut to nighttime, and Bosch sneaks into where Han is, and there's like no security at all in Jabba's palace here. So I guess he just thinks that nobody's probably after Han anymore, but I don't know. So Bosch sets Han down, or like lowers him, and there's like a loud thud, and she kind of looks around, but there's nothing there, and unfreezes him, and then Han just falls to the ground. And I'm like, all right, so you're trying to free Han, you know you're gonna unfreeze him, you couldn't catch him? Like, Han just falls right, like smacks his face right on the ground. And then Bosch leans over, says, you know, you have hibernation sickness, your eyesight will return in time, because Han says, I can't see anything. Han's like, who are you? Because there's the voice encoder there. And then it's the helmet comes off, and turns out it's Princess Leia. And there's an amazing shot here where she says, someone who loves you. Really, really awesome. Really good writing there. So thus begins the story of Han is blind, and we just need to make him useless for a good chunk of the story. And I understand that Han should be weak when he's coming out of hibernation. Being blind is, I guess it's a side effect, but they have Harrison Ford doing like all this like all these weird blind scenes, and he's like, he just like is facing the wrong way, and it's kind of funny for a second, and then for the most part you're like, this is just strange. So I don't know, I think it should have been like a quick bit, and then they should have taken it out. I think it goes on way too long, but I digress. So Han is thrown into a cell with Chewie. We get a nice little reunion there with Chewie. And Chewie is basically like talking to him in Wookiee, and Han's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, Jedi Knight. He's like, Luke can't even take care of himself. Basically Chewie's like, help is on the way, don't worry. This is all part of the plan. And Han's like, yeah, I don't believe you, dude. So Luke shows up in a Jedi robe, like a dark Jedi robe, and he kind of uses the Force to take out a couple guards there, and Luke just looks incredible here. And he shows up to Jabba, and there's like really cool lighting, almost like stage lighting on Luke, and he just looks awesome. You know who else looks awesome is Slave Leia, looking like a damn snack. So anyone who's seen Slave Leia, it's like an iconic, she's a sex symbol. I mean, just an iconic shot here. Carrie Fisher at her prime, for sure. So Jabba has her in the slave outfit, this really like super slutty outfit that surprised was in a Star Wars movie, but it was 1983, so times were different, okay? But Leia's looking good, Luke's looking great. Has the Jedi mind trick on Jabba, and apparently Jedi mind tricks do not work on Hutts, or at least not on Jabba. So I know there's certain species that doesn't work on. Hutts must be one of them. C-3PO says, Master Luke, you're standing on, and then he can't say trapdoor. He just can't say trapdoor, apparently. Or like, you think he'd be worried for Luke, he would like screech out. But anyway, he tries to tell him that he's standing on a trapdoor and he can't get to it. And then Jabba uses that old trapdoor trick where he's like presses a button on his chair. And then Luke falls in the pit, where it turns out along with the Gamorrean, where it turns out the Rancor is down here. This is a really cool shot of the Rancor showing up. But Luke basically like doesn't have any weapons. He hides under a rock for a little bit, and then like smashes a small boulder on the Rancor's hand, and it's like, Arr! I'm like, dude, you're a huge creature, and you smashed a small boulder under your hand, and that hurts. Again, suspending disbelief here. But eventually Luke has like an old bone, probably like, I don't know if it's a human bone or probably not actually because it's huge. But he takes it, he kind of like smacks it, whatever. He puts it between the teeth of the Rancor so that he kind of jumps down. He sees a door behind the Rancor. He runs over there. The Rancor's coming at him, and then he finds like a motorized door, and he throws a boulder at that, and that slams the door down onto the Rancor to take him down. So Jabba's mad about Luke not being sacrificed to the Rancor. He says, sentence the crew to death to the Sarlacc pit, and so he sends them over there. So then we cut to the Sarlacc pit. They get on like kind of these I almost want to call them like houseboats because they're like big cruisers almost. R2 is here serving drinks. He basically tells 3PO not to worry, and 3PO says, "I wish I had your confidence." And then there's a funny bit here of 3PO, who's the translator for Jabba. So on the plank or towards the Sarlacc pit on the speeder thing, we have kind of Boba Fett, we have Luke, we have Han, who are captured, and then there's like a couple guards. And then on Jabba's kind of main speeder, for lack of a better word, 3PO is like standing out there, who's obviously their friend, and he is now translating like, "Oh, Jabba wishes you a most honorable death." And Han's like, "Tell him he's a slimy greaseball," and yelling at him. But it's funny because 3PO is like basically translating like, "You are going to die." So Luke goes to the end of the plank. Jabba's like, "Put them in position." Luke goes to the end of the plank. He looks at Lando, gives him a nod. Lando nods back. He looks at R2, and R2 opens up his little hatch above there, and the plane is in place. Luke jumps off the plank, grabs it, like vaults himself up, flips over a dude, and then puts his hand up. And then R2 like shoots his lightsaber out to Luke, and guess what? It's green. Luke has got a new lightsaber. We find out he constructed it. It's a green lightsaber, different from his original blue. When he got his hand chopped off in Empire and his lightsaber fell, he's got a new hand. He's got a new lightsaber. Luke is here, and he's here to mess shit up. But don't worry, guys. Boba Fett is here, and he's gonna stop Luke because Boba Fett is badass. Oh wait, he just gets worked like a bitch because Boba Fett goes over there. He points his gun at Luke. Luke immediately slices it with his lightsaber. Then he points like his little like I don't want to say string, but like the wrap that goes around Luke, and he kind of gets Luke for a second. But then Luke easily escapes that. And then Luke is kind of fighting these other guys here, and then Han blindly bumps into him, and he like loses his balance and falls into the Sarlacc pit. And I'm like, oh, George Lucas, you took the premise of such a badass character, and let me just say this now: Boba Fett in the trilogy sucks. He should have been the coolest character. He should have been like right behind Vader or the Emperor for the coolest character. He has the best armor, and he doesn't do anything. He has like 2 lines in the whole trilogy, and then he goes out and just dies. And it's just like, I know people love Boba Fett, and especially now that the Mandalorian's out, there's like rumors that he might be in the 2nd season, although I don't know how that's possible because he falls into the Sarlacc pit. Maybe he fights out through it. I don't know, but it just sucks the way that they treated him in this original trilogy. It's like they wanted a cool character on screen, but then they didn't make him do anything cool or have any real significance. They just kill him. So really disappointing. That's the end of Boba Fett. So while this kind of ambush or this escape is going on, Leia gets in on the action. She takes like the chain that she's tied up to, and she wraps around Jabba's neck. And apparently she has the strength to like choke out Jabba, who's huge, and she's just a tiny like small human girl. But she kills Jabba. She chokes him out. So really cool for Leia to do that. There's also a funny scene here where Lando is like falling into the pit, and Han's got him, and Han actually has to save him. And Lando's like, "I thought you couldn't see anything." He's like, "My eyesight's getting a little bit better." And then Han actually has to shoot the tentacle for the Sarlacc, so it retracts and he pulls Lando up there. So Luke heads back to Dagobah to go see Yoda and finish his training, and Han and the crew go on the Millennium Falcon, and they go back to the fleet, and they said we'll regroup later. But before Luke goes back to Dagobah, we cut back to the Empire, and we get the debut of the Emperor Palpatine in person. And before this, we had only seen the hologram of him in Empire, and that was an awesome scene. But Emperor Palpatine shows up here, and it's really, really cool. The Emperor tells Vader, Luke will come for you. He has grown strong, but only together can we turn him to the dark side. And so that's just a quick bit there, but really cool of him showing up. And the two, Vader and that Palpatine, together is a really cool sight. So Luke goes to Yoda, who's now on his deathbed. And in my notes here, I'm like, how long has it been since Empire? Like 2 days? And Yoda was like fine before, and now he's just like, I'm gonna die now. Like, did you contract a disease on Dagobah? Like, what's going on here? But this is a cool scene from Yoda. I like Yoda here more than I do in Empire. Again, I don't know how long it's been. I don't think it's been that long at all, but I don't know. I digress. Yoda tells Luke here, you must confront Vader, only then will you be a Jedi. And Luke is like, all right, I need to know, is Darth Vader really my father? And Yoda is like, man, it's time for me to sleep. And he's like, dude, come on, man, I'm asking you if he's my father. And Yoda's like, all right, he's your father. Like, way to wiggle it out of me. And then there's some cool lines of advice here, or Yoda says with his dying breaths, he says, remember, a Jedi's strength flows from the Force. But he says, beware, once you start down the dark path, it will dominate your destiny. And he also says, do not underestimate the power, the Emperor's power, or you will suffer your father's fate. And then he says, at the end, there is another Skywalker. And then he dies. And then he turns into a Force ghost because he disappears. And Luke is like, another Skywalker? He's like, what? He's like, dude, I just found out Vader is my dad. Now you're telling me there's another Skywalker? He's like, maybe start with this information next time before you're on your dying bed and I can't ask any more questions. But Luke is bummed out. He's like, man, I can't do this alone. I don't know what to do. And he's about to leave Dagobah with R2. And then that's when Ghost Obi-Wan shows up, played by Alec Guinness again. And he says, oh, yeah, no, I got some time to chat. He's like, oh, Luke, come on, like, sit down. Like, let's have a chat. They talk about Vader. He says, you know, I wasn't lying to you when I said Vader killed your father. He died in a sense. And Luke's like, well, geez, dude. He's like, I can't trust anybody in this galaxy. But Obi-Wan says Vader is more machine than man now. Luke's like, well, I can't kill my own father. And Obi-Wan says, well, if that's the case, then the Emperor has already won. So Obi-Wan says the other Skywalker that Yoda spoke of is your twin sister Leia, but he says, watch your feelings or the Emperor will use them against you. And then we have a quick meeting between the rebels to discuss the base that's being protected by a shield that is powered by the Force moon of Endor. And if you couldn't tell already, I'm wearing my brand new Ewok Stout Force Moon Brewery Company, my Endor shirt here. Really, really cool. Like the Blue Moon. Great beer. But yeah, Force Moon of Endor. Famous lines. And probably my favorite landscape. So here it's revealed that the Alliance has stolen an Imperial ship, and then we will use the ship to land on the moon using an old security code. Basically, the next scene is Han and the crew going over. They're like, hey, this is like Imperial ship, blah, 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 whatever. And they're trying to use the old code. We'll see if this works. Vader comes up, and Vader's like, where's that ship going? And they say, in the Force Moon of Endor. And Vader's like, do they have a security code? And they're like, yeah, I was just about to patch them through. It's an old code, but it looks like it holds up. And then Vader has like a moment with Luke where they both kind of look at each other and sense each other. And Luke is like, I shouldn't be here. I'm endangering the mission. And Vader's like, let them pass. He's like, I'll deal with them myself. So Luke, Han, Chewie, and Leia land on the Force Moon of Endor. And then we get the coolest sequence in probably all of Star Wars, the Endor speeder chase. And this still looks incredible. So the stormtroopers there, who have like the Endor stormtroopers, who have some of the coolest armor in the series as well, they basically start getting into a fight, or they start fighting. Luke and Leia jump on two of the speeders there, and it's like super cool. It looks high speed. I've seen like behind the scenes footage of this chase, and they like shot the Force scene, but they like slowed it down, or I don't know how they did it, but what Lucasfilm did with this scene is amazing because it still holds up. Even a movie from 1983, I was watching it in 4K, and like it looks incredible. The special effects are so good. There's a lengthy sequence where Luke and Leia, who are now the Skywalker siblings as we know them, and now that's kind of cool because right after Luke finds out that Leia's his sister, they get a scene together, and they're fighting stormtroopers, and eventually they both get blown off their bikes. Leia gets thrown off like way back, and then Luke at the end there, but they take out all the stormtroopers, and then Luke returns to the group, but Leia does not, and they're like, where's Leia? She didn't return, and they're like, I don't know, we haven't seen her. And then we find out where Leia is, where she's on the Force, and then hello, Wicket the Ewok. Wicket is awesome. He's the Ewok that helps Leia, and they kind of have an introduction. That's the first we see of Ewoks, which are like these little teddy bears with spears, and it's awesome. And if you don't like the Ewoks, then I don't like you. So we go back to the throne room. Vader says, my son is on that shuttle that landed on Endor, and it's interesting because the Emperor says, strange, I did not feel that presence. And so you're wondering, is Luke hiding his feelings from the Emperor after Obi-Wan told him to watch out? Does Luke have that kind of power? I don't know. It's cool that the Emperor does not know that, and Vader did feel that. So that speaks to also the Skywalker connection that Luke and Vader can feel, and the Emperor cannot. So back in Endor, there's no signs of Leia, but the rest of the Ewoks find the group, and then they start bowing down to 3PO. And they're like, what's going on here? And 3PO is like, oh, it seems they see me as some kind of god. And then there's a great shot where Han says, well, why don't you use your divine influence and get us out of this mess? And C-3PO says, oh, sir, it's against my programming to impersonate a deity. And so the Ewoks actually take Han and Luke, and then they tie them to a stick like a pig roast, which is funny, but 3PO, they're like, you can just walk with us. 3PO tells them they're going to light them up, and 3PO's like, I'm sorry, but you guys are here for my barbecue or my banquet, basically. And there's a funny scene with the Ewoks trying to light the torch, and Han's blowing the torch out. He's like, so they're trying to eat them, and Luke says, 3PO, tell them if they don't do as you wish, you'll become angry and use your magic. And he's like, but Master Luke, I don't have any magic. And he's like, just do it. And so 3PO tells them, stop her. I'm gonna use magic. Ewoks are like, we don't believe you do. And they keep trying to eat them. And then that's when Luke closes his eyes and uses the Force, and he makes 3PO levitate and spin in a circle. And it's a really cool scene. Almost kind of reminded me of a Harry Potter scene. But that's when the Ewoks are like, all right, dude, Jesus, we'll let you go. So they untie everybody. And then 3PO tells the story of Luke and the past adventures there. And then they earn the Ewoks' trust. He says we're now part of the tribe. So then we get a great scene on the Ewok bridge, and it's nighttime, or there's a cool blue light coming in through the trees there. It's Leia and Luke, and this is where Luke tells her she is a Skywalker, and she goes, I know, somehow I've always known. Another cool little just Skywalker bit. And then we get the scene where Luke says, my sister has it, my father has it, I have it. He's like, the Force is strong in my family, and it's such a great scene. You see that for any of when the Skywalker set was coming out, they were advertising that. It's one of the most iconic lines in the franchise, so really cool. Han also bursts in here, and it's this funny kind of what Han thinks is a love triangle still going on from the previous movies. He's like, what's going on? And for some reason Leia doesn't just tell him. She's like, oh, I don't know. And then she's like, just hug me. And I'm like, dude, why wouldn't you just tell Han so he's not confused? But we get sort of a payoff for that later. And then in my notes here, I put Vader is here, bitches, because his shuttle is amazing and it looks so cool every time. It's that V shape that comes down, and he arrives on Endor. Really cool scene. Luke says, he knows he needs to face Vader, and he ends up actually surrendering. So then right after that, Luke turns over to Vader, and we get this scene where it's just Vader and Luke. Luke says, I understand that my father, he goes, yeah, that's right, Father. And Vader's like, oh, you've accepted the truth. Luke is like, I've accepted that Anakin Skywalker is my father and that you can still change back. He's like, I feel the good in you. And Vader says, you don't know the power of the dark side. He's like, I must obey my master. And he's like, I haven't heard that name in a long time. And Luke actually says to him, search your feelings, Father. I feel the conflict in you. Let go of the hate. And it's kind of a sad moment here where Vader says, it is too late for me, son. And then Luke says, then my father is truly dead. And then that's when he goes with the stormtroopers, and then they head off towards the Death Star. Lando and Admiral Akbar jump to hyperspace here, getting ready to attack the Death Star. and they think the shield is going to be down. They're like, don't worry, it's all good. Leia, Han, Chewie, R2, and 3PO, and Wicket find the secret base entrance where Wicket goes for the ride of his life. And Wicket gets on one of these stormtrooper speeder bikes, and he goes for a ride. And this little guy's hanging on for dear life. And he actually ends up taking 3 troopers with him. And I'm like, why are you sending 3 troopers off after one speed bike? And the fact that this little Wicket did not crash into a tree at high speeds, he's probably never flown one of these before. No idea, but funny scene because he's like on the handlebars and his feet are like dangling in the wind. But he ends up being the hero because there's only one guard left now, and then Han ends up taking him out. So we cut back to Luke and Vader, where Luke and Vader show up in the iconic throne room. The Emperor unlocks Luke's handcuffs with the Force, and he tells his guards to leave. And these are really cool guards because they look really similar to Snoke's guards in Last Jedi, like all covered in red. So those are like the Emperor's guards, or like the highest of the high power, the guards dressed in all red. So that's cool. So Luke says to the Emperor, you will not turn me like you did my father. And he used a really cool scene here where he says, your overconfidence is your weakness. And then the Emperor kind of turns back at him. And he says, your faith in your friends is yours. And it's like, don't take it so personal, Emperor. But the Emperor reveals basically, this was my trap. I wanted you to find those plans because at the beginning of the movie, there's a reveal where they said, like, the Emperor has made a grave mistake, and, now we know where this base is, and, like, we can't believe we got this break. And the Emperor's like, no. He's like, I wanted you to find those plans. He's like, the best of my men will be waiting for the resistance. I meant to leak location of the base. And we're like, oh man, dude, that's some diabolical shit. So we cut back to the sky. Lando is like, oh, our systems are being jammed. And he's like, how can they be jamming us? And he goes, unless they know we're coming. And that's when we get the Admiral Akbar, it's a trap, the famous line there. And then so Luke is in the throne room watching as he starts to see the fleet get attacked there. The Emperor says, give in, use your hate to strike me down. Luke's like, no, I'd rather not. So we go back to the Endor. The Battle of the Empire versus the Ewoks is in full effect here. There's an Ewok paraglider. And I'm like, dude, when did you build that? So that's super cool because he flies in there. Eventually we'll see more of the Ewoks fighting there. But we go back to Han and Leia at the door, but they say the code has changed. They're like, and then Leia says, R2, where are you? We need you at the door. And in my head, I'm like, you're signaling R2? Hey, where are you, R2? And if he's going to respond, what? Beep, boop, beep? Are you going to understand that? Now, I guess Luke can understand R2, so maybe Leia can too, but it's just funny. I just thought it's funny that she's like, R2, where are you? And he's like, beep, beep, boop. And she's like, oh, okay, gotcha. It's like, but again, this is Star Wars, so it's not exactly based on reality. So we're back in orbit, and the rebels notice that the fighters are attacking, but they're not the Star Destroyers. And it's like, oh, the Emperor has something special in plan. So they're like, don't fire yet. So once the Emperor knows Luke is watching, he goes on his comm on his chair, and he's like, yo, go ahead and fire. And that's when they use like the Death Star from the weapon from the first movie, from New Hope, where like the green beam like goes by all those guys that are like way too close and definitely getting radiation poisoning, and then like the lines all get together, and it's the one that blew up the planet. They're the same weapon. It's like the major cannon, the ion cannon, whatever. Except in New Hope, it blows up a planet. This is like a weaker version because it just blows up like one of the ships there, but it still is just gonna like wreck the rebels. And it turns out that the plans where the Emperor said, they're not, the weapons aren't up. Turns out the weapons are fully operational. So the rebels are saying, like, we need to retreat. Akbar is like, dude, we gotta go. We can't put up with this firepower. And Lando says, Han will have that shield down. We gotta give him more time. And he always calls him Han. And it's a cute little bit. And I think they do this in Solo too. I'll have to look at that when we review that. But everyone calls him Han, and then he calls him Han. And I'm like, that's just Lando's character, man. So R2's trying to get to the door and he blows a freaking circuit because he gets shot or something. And Han's like, "Oh, I can just hotwire it." And it's like, you can just hotwire it, dude? It's like, man, okay. So then he starts to work on that. We get like a sad Ewok death scene for no reason. There's just like one Ewok that's dying and then the other Ewok is mourning them. And I'm like, man, this should not have been included. So we go back to the Emperor and Luke and Vader. The Emperor is tempting Luke again. He says, "Strike me down, start the path down the dark side." And Luke actually bites here. He's getting angry. And he goes to strike him down, and Vader's saber actually stops him. So Vader actually saves the Emperor here, which seems strange, but I guess the Emperor just thinks this is Luke's part of their master plan. Or the Emperor says he's foreseen that Luke is going to join them, so maybe this is what he saw in his vision. As we learned in Empire Strikes Back, Yoda told him that you can see parts of the past and parts of the future, but it's blurry and it's not always true. So we go back to Endor, where the Ewoks take out a couple of AT-STs, which is like the ones that walk like chickens, and with two huge logs, where the two logs come in and like smash it, and then also just a set of logs that like they tied up. So they just cut down a bunch of trees apparently. And they let it go, and the AT-ST like falls on it, almost like a banana peel. It's kind of weird, but Han and Leia almost get captured, and then we get a really neat reverse "I know" scene where Han said there's two troopers like holding him up, and Han says, "I love you," and Leia goes, "I know," and then she shoots him. As using Han for cover, she shoots the two troopers. So that was really neat, a cute scene, following up from the Empire scene. Luke and Vader are battling it out back on the ship there, and Luke is just starting to wreck Vader. And I was like, okay, so was Yoda lying? Because if you remember, Yoda was like, Luke asked Yoda specifically in Empire when they first start training, "Is the dark side stronger?" And Yoda goes, "No." And I'm looking over here, and Luke, who was getting his ass kicked by Vader before, he is just going to town on Vader because he's mad. And I'm like, yo, Yoda, check your facts, homie. Like, I think the dark side is a little bit stronger, okay? And we see a little more evidence of that in just a bit. So I think Yoda just didn't want to admit the fact that a little dark side is sometimes not so bad. So Luke is telling Vader, he feels the good in him again. He's like, "Let go of your hate." And Vader's like, "Look, if you will not fight, then you will meet your destiny." And that's when Palpatine gets out of his chair, the Emperor, and I just thought of like the Michael Jackson popcorn eating meme, where he's like eating the popcorn because Palpatine gets up and he's like, "This is getting good." Like he literally is like he gets out of his chair and he needs to get close for the action. So that was pretty funny. There's some more fighting on Endor. They finally get into the base there, where they're trying to blow it up. They like get a bunch of explosives. I don't know if they just found these explosives. I like rewound the movie to see if I missed something, but they just have like a bunch of things they can detonate in the base there, and apparently take down the shield just means blow it up. It just means blow up that base. So that they can take down the satellites the signal can't transmit. But Han just like rigs a whole bunch of explosives there. So we go back to the throne room. Vader says, "If you're not going to turn, then we'll go after Leia." And that's when Luke just snaps. And then he was already mad, but he just unleashes fury upon Vader. This is the scene where he cuts off his hand, where he's literally like coming down over and over on Vader, and it's just like really crazy. And he cuts his hand off, and so now like father like son, they both lost their right hand. Runs in the family, I guess. So the Emperor then says, "Okay, now it's time to take your father's place by my side." And that's when Luke kind of calms himself and he goes, "No." He's like, "I will never turn to the dark side." And then he throws his lightsaber, and I'm like, "Come on, Luke. You're almost a Jedi Master, dude." And it's like, Obi-Wan told you, do not underestimate the power of the Emperor. He told you that for a reason. And Luke completely forgot that, and he did. And he just thinks the Emperor doesn't have any powers, and he's sitting there, and he's like, "I took down Vader, the Emperor's nothing." But why are you throwing your lightsaber, dude? Like, if nothing else, you want to keep that lightsaber, and if the Emperor comes at you, you can use it to deflect. But no, he just tosses his lightsaber like, yo, I'm not afraid of you. Emperor's like, oh, dude, you should be, because you're about to learn a hard lesson. And yeah, in my notes here I put, did you forget what Obi-Wan told you in all caps? But then we get this line where he says, you failed, Your Highness. He goes, I am a Jedi, like my father before me. And I got goosebumps when he said that, because that is such a good line, and the music is kind of playing in the background. So Han and crew finally blow up the satellite. The shield is down, so they start attacking the Death Star finally. Back in the throne room, the Emperor is like, oh, bro, did you not know that I had Force lightning? And so immediately he says, so be it, Jedi. And then that's when Palpatine, like, does the Force lightning, and he just wrecks Luke. And Luke takes, like, an unhealthy amount of lightning here, like, easily giving him, like, severe brain damage, if not, like, I don't know if you can get, like, paralysis, but he takes lightning for, like, a few minutes solid. And presumably this is, like, super powerful dark power lightning. So again, Yoda's saying the dark side is not stronger. Until he went to the dark side, Luke could not take down Vader. He was getting, like, destroyed by him before, and now you're telling me that Palpatine's got this Force lightning. Dude, if Luke had Force lightning, he would just be wrecking people. So maybe we should not draw the line so much. Maybe we should learn a little bit of the dark side powers and still be good. So, but the line is thin between hero and villain, I know. There also is a cool line that the Emperor says here right before he starts electrocuting him. He says, "Now, young Skywalker, you will die." And then Vader he gets up, he's like standing next to him, and he says, "No." And then he goes, "No!" And then Vader picks him up, and Palpatine is still, like, using his lightning, and Vader picks him up, and so the lightning is, like, going into Vader as well. And whether Palpatine just didn't mean to stop or couldn't control stopping, or he's trying to also kill Vader for going against him, maybe a little bit of both. Vader picks him up and, like, WWE throws him over the railing into, like, the reactor, and definitely killing the Emperor, and definitely no way that he is ever coming back from that, or so we think. But then now the shield is down, the space battle's heating up there, so everything's picking up. People are going down there trying to infiltrate the Death Star. We cut back to Luke and Vader. Vader is actually on his dying breaths now, and it's a really cool Skywalker sound here, where Vader's, like, iconic breathing apparatus is, like, all messed up from the lightning and just, like, short-circuited. So now it's like a wheezing sound, and you can tell Vader who was, like, almost at full strength. I mean, Luke took his arm out, but Vader was, like, fully powerful before that, and after that lightning, it really wrecked him, because now he, like, can't do anything and he's about to die. But he tells Luke to take his helmet off. But Luke says, "But you'll die," and he says, "Nothing can stop that now." But then there's a really nice moment where he says, "Just once, let me look upon you with my own eyes." And I was like, oh. Luke is like, "You're coming with me, I gotta save you." And then Vader says, "You already have." And I was like, bro, is this a rom-com? Like, what's going on here? But that was really, really sweet. And Vader's character is so cool, because he does a whole 180, and he ends up saving his son's life, and at the time we think killing the Emperor. And yeah, I mean, Luke would have died, and he just had enough, and Luke finally got to him, and he does turn back to the light before he dies. And then this Death Star is bigger, because apparently the Millennium Falcon can fit, like, within the corridors. So Wedge and Lando go to the reactor, and they take that out. And then there's a cool scene of them escaping, and the reaction's blowing up there. And then the Death Star is donezo once again, although this one wasn't quite complete. So it seems like they made it a little bit better, but they still left a huge reactor that just blows everything up again, so they didn't improve on that plan at all. Also, there's a really cool bit here where Luke is escaping using Vader's ship, as we find out he actually takes Vader's body with him, and that's really, really cool, because you just see Luke flying Vader's ship there, which is really cool. I don't think I ever picked up on that. But Luke ends up taking Vader's body to Endor, kind of in a private area where he puts him back on the suit or the helmet back on, and he actually burns him, kind of putting an end to death to Darth Vader and kind of putting his father to peace, and Vader's full redemption is there. Or I should say, it kind of closes the book on Vader's redemption. So there's a big celebration at the end there, with the Ewoks and Han, and they all celebrate. We get Hayden Christensen's ghost, who plays Anakin Skywalker in the prequels. I don't think Anakin does as bad of a job as he gets around for. I think the writing is really terrible in the prequels, but yeah, they kind of retconned him in there. So now it's the Force Ghost, it's Anakin, and Obi-Wan and Yoda as the Force Ghost at the end there. And that is Return of the Jedi. Okay, so the Force was strong with this one. This one has to go to Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. As much as Empire, last movie was all about Vader, this movie is all about Luke. And it's just crazy to see the growth from how he was on A New Hope just 2 movies ago, where he's on Tatooine and he's like this whiny little kid and he doesn't want to do anything. And then how his journey shapes him and makes him become a strong warrior. And between, the death of his aunt and uncle, which kind of forces him into this life, and then he goes to face off with Vader a little bit, but he doesn't really know. He gets some training from Obi-Wan, but he takes down the Death Star. Then he goes and actually trains with Yoda, becomes stronger, has another showdown with Vader, and then really completes his training, and then gets to see his dad's redemption too, Vader's redemption. It's crazy to see his character growth, and he feels like a whole different character at the end of Return of the Jedi than he did at the beginning of A New Hope. So that's really hard to do in a trilogy, and I think Lucasfilm did a great job of changing his arc and doing a great job of putting him as one of the best characters of all time. All right, and a score for this one. This movie, despite its flaws, and these are just little things like Luke hiding under the rock with the Rancor. Again, things like the dark side appearing stronger. I mean, these are just things that I was nitpicking, but overall, this I think is the strongest one. This is a really, really great movie. I'm going to give it a 9.8. So my personal rankings, and I understand that, yes, this means that I have changed my opinion from the first recording of New Hope, because I went back and looked to see what I gave New Hope as a score, and it turns out I actually said in that video, oh, this is a good movie, but I know that Empire and Return of the Jedi are superior. Well, it turns out after rewatching these movies and thinking of them and looking at it with a critical eye, that I have changed my whole opinion on the trilogy, and this trilogy is so good. I have Empire last, so I actually have Jedi, New Hope, and Empire. That's just my personal preference. I'm sure some people can argue that as well. I know a lot of people put it maybe Empire, New Hope, Jedi, or I think probably the majority of people, Empire, Jedi, New Hope. For me, I just enjoy watching Jedi, New Hope, Empire, and I really like Empire. I do think it is overrated, but it just speaks to how good this trilogy is, because Empire is really, really, really good, and what a lot of people think is an amazing movie and the best one. If I'm putting that third, that means the other 2 movies must be pretty damn good to top it. So nothing tops this original trilogy. I like how the other 2 trilogies that we're going to review, the prequels and then the new sequel trilogy, they don't hold a candle to this one, but I do like a lot of the pieces of those trilogies. So we'll dive into that for each individual movie. But yeah, I think Jedi is the most complete one. It's got the most iconic scenes, I think, for me. I think Empire is the most popular because of the end reveal, that huge twist. But it really is, as big as that twist is, it really is just kind of what everyone remembers about it, and they almost put that reveal like at the very top. But when I think of Star Wars, and I grew up with these movies, so these movies all hold a special place in my heart, but like I think of Endor. Endor is so memorable, and I think of the Ewoks, and I think of the throne room. I mean, the whole throne room sequence is so good. With Palpatine and Vader and Luke saying, like, I know you can still change. When he's captured, to the throne room scene, to Luke looking out at the fleet, fighting there, and then waiting for Han to take it down. I just think there's a lot more going on in this movie, and it's just so masterfully well done, where you have the battle up top, Then you have the battle below that Han's trying to get into. Then you have the Luke Vader scene, and Luke and Vader has been like the two big, the big clash for the first two movies, and now it's like Vader's almost like a side character. He's nothing compared to his master, and it's just all so good. And I just think it, from start to finish, it really does an amazing job of wrapping up the trilogy, and telling a complete story between Luke's growth and Vader's redemption, and Leia's involvement in her finding out she's a Skywalker, and Han and Leia, and just all the whole cast. It just gives them a really nice wrap up for that original trilogy, and I think the original trilogy as a whole tells the most complete story and the one that makes the most sense from start to finish. Alright guys, so that's it. So I hope there's not too many mean comments. Again, you guys can have your opinions. These are just my opinions here. So I know people who like will die for Jedi, and I know people who die for Empire. So like, the point is that we all love this franchise. If you're watching this, hopefully you do too. And I've had a blast going back and reviewing these and putting a critical eye on them and really studying them and kind of talking about it after. So that wraps up the original trilogy already. I can't believe how quickly these are going. We're going to be doing the prequels next. I always do my reviews in release order because I can never do reviews in another order. I do them in the way that they were released. So thank you guys so much for joining me for this original trilogy run here, for the review you've been looking for. That we're going to continue it next week. So catch me next week for episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And the prequels are rough, but I don't know. I don't really like Phantom Menace very much, except for like the ending, which is amazing, with Duel of the Fates and all that. So I'm gonna go in with an open mind, and now that I have to actually like study it and take notes, maybe my opinions will change. But I think this original trilogy is really special, and it's gonna be hard. It'll be interesting to see where things shake up. I think visually the new trilogy is much better. So that is one thing I noticed here as a sort of a last note. I mean, this movie was made in 1983, and I'm watching the 4K version, so I'm watching the best possible version. And it looks great for a 1983 movie, but there are times where you're like, yeah, this movie was made in 1983, and I'm looking forward to the new movies where the visuals are just stunning. And I think of things like Last Jedi, where they're on the Salt Planet. It just looks incredible, and it's just going to be a different vibe. But anyway, I'm just rambling now. But again, thank you for joining me. And until next time, may the Force be with you.